Vikings, let's win the game.
Vikings fans, the heat in Minnesota just got real. Two starters are a major concern with a strong chance of missing the matchup against the Packers. To make things even more complicated, the quarterback is being measured against the standard of an old rival, which pushed him to fire back with a pointed response of his own. You will get the full story on why the star of the offense has gone into full protection mode and how the Vikings still have a shot at a historic road achievement. And the final story is for the die-hard fans only. But before we dive into every detail of this breakdown, let me talk to you quickly. Hit that subscribe button. It is free. It does not cost you anything, and it helps keep this fan voice alive. Drop a like as well, because that tells YouTube to push this conversation out to more Vikings fans. And jump into the comments, because this space belongs to Vikings Nation. First storyline of the week, and it starts hot. The injury report for this game in Green Bay has plenty of drama, but also a little hope. The Vikings head into a game that could save their season with only two starters listed as questionable. Jonathan Greenard, dealing with a shoulder issue, and Ryan Kelly, working back from the concussion problems that have kept him out since that loss in Week 4. It may look like a short list, but in trench warfare, one detail can change everything. Kevin O'Connell made it clear that Kelly's designation is mostly procedural, part of the concussion protocol, because the veteran center is still working his way out of that history of hits to the head. And honestly, just picturing the offensive line back at full strength with the group that has been playing well lately is a massive relief. Blake Brandel has held things down at center the last few weeks, but having Kelly back in command is a different conversation. He is the one who organizes, sets protections, and is barking out calls before the snap. With J.J. McCarthy still adjusting to the speed of the league, any stability up front is absolute gold. On the other side, Greenard missed the game against the Bears because of that shoulder, and Dallas Turner had to take on a bigger role. He played well and competed hard, but the truth is that this pass rush looks completely different when both of them are on the field. The good news is that Greenard has been ramping up during the week. He did not practice on Wednesday, was limited on Thursday, and now looks much closer to being ready. Imagine the pressure on the opposing quarterback with those two rotating off the edge. That is when things get really fun. The Purple Faithful can feel that difference. You can see it in their eyes. And that is not all. Christian Darrisaw and Will Freeze, who had knee issues, are also expected to go. In other words, the core of the line should be intact. On the other sideline, the Packers are dealing with their own mess. A massive injury report with more than 15 names, including key players like Nate Hobbs, Key Walker, and Carl Brooks, who all look likely to miss the game after sitting out practice all week. And there is still the Josh Jacobs storyline, limited in practice, with a last-minute decision coming on whether he can go full speed or just in a reduced role. Honestly, this feels like one of those rare weeks when the medical report is more favorable for the Vikings than for Green Bay. That does not happen often. Still, with all of that, this cannot turn into a trap where the team walks in thinking the job is already done. This is a divisional game in their house, with the Vikings' season on the line. That is exactly the moment when the defense has to smell blood and the offense has to protect JJ as if this is the last shot of the year. Only here you get this kind of Vikings fan perspective, reading the full picture. Health, mentality, and rivalry all tangled together. Drop a comment if you agree, and stay to the end because the last story hits hard. In fact, the next one already reshapes how we look at McCarthy and the franchise's future. Now we get into something that cuts deep for any fan base. Patience with a young quarterback. J.J. McCarthy is taking shots from every direction, and suddenly the comparisons with Jordan Love in Green Bay are everywhere. That is not just a social media joke. The core question is simple. Are we watching the same story play out again, just in purple instead of green and gold? Back when Love took over, Aaron Rodgers told everyone to take a breath and trust the kid. Even so, Packers fans were torching the front office, calling it a bad pick and a wasted future. Love started with one of the lowest completion rates in the league, interceptions all over the place, and the media piling on. To be honest, the atmosphere around McCarthy right now feels very similar. When you line up the first 5 starts for both quarterbacks, it looks like a copy. Completion percentage near the bottom of the league, questionable decisions, throws behind receivers, slow reads. The big difference is in total yardage, but the feeling is the same. The game looks too fast, and the mind is not quite in sync with the arm yet. Then come the analysts, former players, and armchair quarterbacks pointing fingers and quickly slapping the bust label on the kid. And let us be real. Patience is the one thing in short supply when the team sits at a record of 4 wins and 6 losses. Context changes everything. Love spent 2 seasons on the bench, watching Rodgers at work, tweaking his mechanics, and learning the offense. Even then, when he finally got the job, he looked raw, and plenty of people called the Packers' long-term plan a fiasco. But midway through that first full year as the starter, he settled in, gained confidence, and the numbers climbed in a big way. There was no magic there, just repetition, detail work, and live game reps. With J.J. McCarthy, the pressure hit even harder. He lost his rookie season to injury, missed valuable snaps and rhythm, then walked straight into a year where the team was coming off a 14-win campaign. The expectations were maxed out from the very first snap. Fans see what Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones are doing now in Seattle and Indianapolis and feel like the franchise went all in on McCarthy and burned through the safety net too soon. But once again, this is the beginning of a journey. Defend the North has to remember that development is not a straight line. The reality is that the Vikings chose the hard road. They passed on two safer options to try to find the quarterback for the next decade. McCarthy's mechanics are off, the accuracy is shaky, and the reads are sometimes slow. All of that is real. It is just as real, though, that those issues can be corrected, just like Love turned things around and went from punching bag to point of pride for the Packers. Only here you get this Vikings fan angle, looking at the rival and trying to learn from both their mistakes and their successes. So before the fan base decides to quit on JJ, it is worth remembering that patience is a crucial part of building a quarterback. That does not erase bad games. He was poor against the Bears. Full stop. Drop a comment if you agree, and stay locked in, because next we go inside McCarthy's own head, into his explanation of what is happening, and it is the kind of thing that really makes you think. You know what bothered me most about this whole week? It was not just J.J. McCarthy's ugly throws or the late reads. It was what he said after the game against the Bears. He came out talking about rewiring neurological pathways, about relearning the position because he had been coached to play it in a completely different way under Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. I get what he meant, but as a fan, the first reaction is to swallow hard and think this sounds like a long process. Deep down, he is saying he needs to unlearn what got him here in order to become the quarterback Kevin O'Connell wants. Changing habits, changing reflexes, changing split-second decisions. And that, to be totally honest, does not happen in 5 games or half a season. The problem is the schedule does not wait, the NFC North does not wait, and the fan base's patience is finite. Vikings Nation feels the clock ticking when it looks at a record of 4 wins and 6 losses and sees the Packers right there in the race. Analysts were pointing this out even earlier. Ben Solak at ESPN had already shown that JJ still avoids throwing over the middle, holds the ball too long, and gets his footwork wrong in the pocket. When the script is strong early in games, he looks like a different quarterback. Calm, cleaner mechanics, firm throws to the sideline. As soon as things go off script and he takes a couple of hits, his feet get messy, the read slows down, and the accuracy fades. That is when his talk about the brain rewiring kicks in. It feels like he is overthinking instead of just playing. It is like when someone tries so hard not to make a mistake that every move becomes stiff and tentative. And this is where I think the front office misjudged the timing. They cleared the path, moving Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones out of the way, believing J.J. could shorten that learning curve, even with the knee injury in his past and even after missing time this season with an ankle issue. They bet that his talent and football IQ would fast-track the process. But development follows its own pace, especially when the player himself admits he is actively reprogramming the way he sees the game. That sounds like the blueprint for a long-term project, not a quick fix for win-now football. At the same time, you can see flashes. There are tough throws he nails, drives where he runs the offense like a veteran, moments that remind you why the team believed in him. Only here you get this Vikings fan perspective stuck between respecting the maturity of his comments and feeling the desperation of the standings tightening. I am split on it myself. I respect the honesty, but I want to see more answers on the field. Drop a comment if you agree, because that doubt does not belong to just one fan. And stick around, because next we go to the other side of this story. The locker room, Justin Jefferson, and how this group is trying to keep J.J. Stike from mentally going under. There is one piece of this that hits the fan base right in the heart. It is not just J.J.'s arm, it is who is standing next to him while he takes all this heat. In the middle of criticism, doubt, and nonstop comparisons to Jordan Love, Justin Jefferson has stepped up like an older brother in that locker room. He knows the young quarterback turns on the television and sees wall-to-wall negativity, and still Jefferson steps forward and basically says, "Lean on me. I am here." That changes the internal temperature in a big way. Jefferson said J.J. showed up ready for his first start at Lambeau, focused on improving, on flushing the last bad game, and on finding a way to lead the offense again. And honestly, that is exactly what you want to hear from your superstar. Not just crisp routes and highlight plays, but leadership, a willingness to protect his quarterback when the outside noise is at its loudest. He knows every interception becomes a talking point, every mistake becomes a meme, and even so, he keeps trying to be that shoulder and that shield. Imagine what that does for JJ's confidence. You take the field knowing the best player on the offense, one of the best receivers in the entire league, is telling you, "Relax, talk to me, we will adjust this together." That is not a small thing. We talk all the time about mechanics and reads, but confidence also wins games. Jefferson already took the blame earlier in the year on that pick six against the Bears, saying he ran a bad route. Now again, he is trying to lift some of the mental weight off McCarthy. That is quiet leadership, the kind that holds a locker room together during a rough season. At the same time, you cannot ignore the reality. Even with that support, the season clock keeps ticking. The team is coming off back-to-back losses, the record is underwater, the division is tight, and this game at Lambeau feels like a mini playoff. That is why this connection between the two of them is so crucial. If Jefferson can be that emotional anchor, maybe JJ the quarterback, and yes, the double J confusion is real, can slow the game down, take the easy throws, move the chains, and stop forcing hero ball on third down. Only here you get this kind of Vikings fan read, paying more attention to the emotional side than just the box score. I love seeing that leadership, but I also feel that nagging concern that a veteran's support alone cannot fix the scoreboard. The truth is, this blend of internal backing and external pressure can either explode in a positive way or go completely sideways. Drop a comment if you agree, because this goes straight to the soul of anyone who cares about this team. And stay locked in, because the last piece really is heavy. We are talking about a nearly surreal scenario where an inconsistent Vikings team can still walk out of Green Bay with the kind of historic note that fans remember for years. It is wild how the NFL toys with everyone's emotions. In a season that feels completely off, the Vikings head to Green Bay with a chance at something that almost never shows up on the radar. Negative record, sitting at the bottom of the division, painful home losses, and still a very real shot at leaving Lambeau with a kind of divisional treble on the road. It is the type of storyline that makes any fan scratch their head. Two of the team's 4 wins this year have come on the road inside the NFC North, one in Chicago in the opener and another in Detroit in a genuinely hostile environment. And it was not a grizzled veteran under center, it was JJ running the offense, taking hits, making mistakes, learning, but winning. To be honest, that is what makes this game against the Packers feel so heavy. It is not just about this week, it is about closing the loop on a twisted season narrative. This either becomes a positive memory or just another scar. If the Vikings win in Green Bay, they complete a sweep of road wins within the division, a rare feat in any year, especially in one this unstable. In the middle of a dip in form and the questions around the quarterback, you suddenly have a stat shouting that this is a team that can battle on the road. The locker room feels that. It does not fix everything in the standings, but it changes the conversations and the mood in those Monday meetings. Imagine silencing Lambeau again in a year that looked ready to fall apart. That would hit differently. On the other side, Green Bay has been stumbling as well. After climbing near the top of the division, the Packers lost to the Panthers, then to the Eagles, and barely escaped against a Giants team that is completely battered. The offense has been stuck, scoring very few points and leaning heavily on the run game. And there is still the Josh Jacobs subplot, with limited practices and the big question of how much he will really be able to give. It looks like the perfect setup for the Vikings to spring an upset, and that is exactly where the danger lies. In the recent history of the rivalry, the balance has tilted toward Minnesota. Even though the Packers still have the edge in the all-time series, the Vikings have won 6 of the last 9 and can make it 3 straight in Lambeau. 3 straight. Winning at a rival's stadium is hard enough. Turning that place into somewhere they feel uncomfortable is another level entirely. That is when you start getting into their heads, becoming regular material for local radio, talk shows, and hallway chatter at their facility. Long rivalries live off that kind of thing. All of this makes this matchup feel way bigger than just another regular season week. In a year filled with injuries, a risky bet on a young quarterback, and expectations falling apart, there is still a shot at walking away with a historic marker that says, "See, even limping, this team did not run from big road games." Only here you get this Vikings fan perspective, holding frustration and pride in the same breath. At the same time, if it goes wrong, the narrative flips in minutes. Instead of an unlikely treble, it becomes another missed opportunity. Not even when the rival is wobbling do we take advantage. It is exactly the kind of result we will look back on in a couple of years, either with a smile or with anger. Drop a comment if you agree. And stick around for the final takeaway because that is where we pull together the injuries. JJJ Jefferson, this treble talk, the rest of the season, and call it like it is for the franchise with no middle ground. It is almost funny to pause for a second and breathe in the middle of this purple chaos. When you stack up the injuries, the comparison to Jordan Love, JJ's unusual post-game comments, Jefferson's support, and this wild chance at a treble in Lambeau, it is obvious this is not just another week, it is an identity test. Either this team proves it can take a punch and answer back, or it becomes just another frustrating chapter in Vikings history. I still believe there is something left in this group. Drop a comment because this space belongs to everyone who lives and breathes Defend the North. Stay tuned. SKOL Vikings, let's go!